Hello, I'm Ian Reno.
And I'm Owen Schneider.
We'll be interviewing Mr. Dan Lenz here today. We got Owen Marshall behind the camera.
Yes. All right, so Mr. Lenz, to start off, where were you born?
I was born here in Milwaukee at St. Joseph's Hospital on November 10th, 1965.
65. Okay, cool. So you lived in Brookfield most of your childhood, is that correct?
Yeah, primarily grew up in Brookfield, off of Burleigh Place and Brady Road. I think when we first talked, I told the story about we moved there when I was 7 years old. So I spent the majority of my childhood, high school years, even back home during college years, out in Brookfield.
Was that a nice place to live, like when you were growing up, or was it like dangerous at all?
No, it was. It's just to this day, it's still a wonderful place. Brookfield's pretty unique in that you have really nice neighborhoods with big yards. One of the great things about the place we grew up in, I had 4 brothers, and we had an acre and a half. So we had pretty much an acre in the backyard where we hit the golf ball, we played baseball. It was really nice place to grow up. Different from here in Wauwatosa and different parts of the city, where you have sidewalks and the lots just aren't as big. So to your point, Brookfield was a great place to live.
And you mentioned your brothers, so you had 4, correct?
Correct.
And were you pretty close with them? Did you guys spend a lot of time together?
We did. I was particularly close to my younger brother, Matt, who's 7 years younger than me. He was born in 72. So it was just great having a little brother that I could, hang out with. I took care of him a lot when he was when he was a baby and a young kid. So we have a really good bond to this day. So.
Nice.
Yeah.
So you had friends in the area, I'm sure.
Yep.
What was like one of the main things you would do with your friends, like for fun?
Primarily it was shooting hoops.
Yeah.
We had a really nice hoop on our garage and kind of a half-court setup driveway. So I'd always be shooting and have neighbor friends and school friends playing, and my brothers as well. So I'd say that was our go-to, is shooting hoops.
Cool. So
Yeah.
you guys were a pretty athletic family. You mentioned athletics a lot, especially basketball.
Yep.
So that was a center part of your childhood?
Yeah, lots of basketball. We also were lucky enough to live just a couple doors down from, I think I talked to you guys about this as well. It used to be a junior high school, now it's an elementary school. But so literally 2 doors down, you cross the street, Burleigh, and we had 6 tennis courts. We had like 3 different football fields, a sledding hill in the winter. So there was all kinds of activity just right there, a stone's throw away. It was really great.
It's fun, yeah, sweet.
Yeah.
Did you ever go into the city? I know Brookfield's like 25 minutes away from the city, right?
Yeah.
Or did you ever stop in there when you were a kid or younger?
Down to the city?
Yeah.
We would probably go, I would say we went for more special occasions. We'd go for the July 3rd fireworks.
Yeah.
I remember my mom and dad taking us down to they used to have a really big Memorial Day parade downtown. We used to go to that. So on occasion, for special occasions and for special events.
Maybe sports games too or something like that?
Yeah, for a Bucks game.
Yeah.
My mom and dad were season ticket holders for the Marquette, used to be called the Warriors, now the Golden Eagles. So the Milwaukee Arena downtown was the place I spent a lot of time at. We had season tickets.
That's sweet.
So yeah.
So you kind of connected to this. You were obviously in a suburb of Milwaukee, but you say you didn't go in there like a whole lot into downtown. Did you feel almost separate from the city, or did you feel a part of like the downtown area?
I think growing up we felt like, yes, we were in a suburb, but whenever anybody ever asked you where you were from or where you grew up, the first thing out of your mouth was Milwaukee. I grew up in Milwaukee. I grew up in a great place by a great lake. That was a really popular slogan back in the day. Obviously, Lake Michigan and the lakefront was really cool. To add to your question before, in high school, we used to, for fun, we'd go down to Bradford Beach. I think young people like you guys today are still doing that for fun.
Yeah.
I remember going down there and playing volleyball, just hanging out with friends down at Bradford Beach in high school, for sure.
Yeah. Cool.
Yeah.
So, like, a little before high school, was like your main transportation biking everywhere?
Yeah, we got around, like I said, we didn't have sidewalks when I was growing up out in Brookfield, so we pretty much biked everywhere. or we'd cut through neighbors' lawns. And, I'd have a buddy that lived, a few blocks away, and you wouldn't walk on the road, or we didn't have sidewalks, so you just cut through neighbors' lawns. And it was a lot of running back and forth at night. And you'd want to get home quickly, so you'd sprint through the back neighbors' lawns, and that's how you got around, either a bike or crossing through people's backyards. It was different. It was, in today's day and age, I think people would be like, "Hey, who's that kid running through my back lawn?" But
or a ring doorbell would pick us up.
Yeah,
Get us nowadays.
Exactly.
Yeah, so again, adding on to that, you would bike around. Would you usually go to like a park, or where would your location be, or a meeting spot, kind of, as a kid?
Usually there's a couple. I had a good friend, John Partey, his house was always kind of a meeting place for several of my buddies and myself. I spoke of Burleigh Junior High School. That was kind of a meeting place because of the tennis courts, football fields. I remember going. You'll like this, Ian. I remember going over there and taking a bucket of balls or a bag of balls, and you hit 15, 20 balls, and hopefully they go all in a similar area, and then you go pick them up and hit them back. So to your point, or to your question, Owen, we would gather there. We'd go down to, when I was really young in grade school, we'd go down to my grade school, Fairview South, and shoot baskets down there. They had a full court basketball hoop down there.
That's cool.
So yeah.
So you talked a little bit about your little brother and like how your guys are still close and everything. Do you remember like that day that he was born? Because you were 7, you said?
I do. I remember I don't remember the day he was born very much, but I remember it was probably in those days, it was 2 or 3 days later, my mom came home from the hospital with him. So I distinctly remember being at the bottom of the driveway waiting for my mom and dad to pull up with him in the car. It was pretty cool. Yeah.
That was awesome.
Yeah. It was
That
great.
Pretty cool. And then you had some emphasis on your dad. So could you maybe talk a little bit about what he did and how involved you were in his business?
I wasn't terribly involved. Honestly, one of my older brothers, his name is David. He's an artist by trade. He's a self-employed artist. He's actually one of the more well-known, renowned artists in the country. He's an oil painter. And I think he picked up and got that skill set and that talent from my dad and my grandpa, both being in the art business. My grandpa was a painter on my dad's side, and then my dad's profession was, he was an art dealer. He bought and sold artwork pretty much for the majority of his professional life. So he had a gallery down on 77th and Burleigh, and I think, they say that certain talents and certain things pass on from generation to generation, and obviously my brother David got that talent of being a great artist.
I think I saw some of his artwork in the Milwaukee Art Museum.
Yeah, he's had pieces down at the Milwaukee Art Museum.
Yeah.
He has a really huge, beautiful painting down at Children's Hospital, near Frederick Children's down there. He's had a bunch of different shows and a bunch of. He used to participate. This is a neat story about the lakefront, and I think they still do it to this day. It's called the Lakefront Festival of the Arts, and it's not only painters, but it's people that make pottery, different all kinds of different artwork, and it's this 2-day. I think it's a Saturday Sunday event, and it's called the Lakefront Festival of the Arts. And he was down there for many years, showing and selling his paintings down at the Lakefront Festival of the Arts. So. It was a pretty cool event.
You're growing up in a super artistic household.
Yeah.
You haven't made a claim that you're very artistic. So
No.
what was that contrast like?
It's funny because I'm sure you guys all have you have brothers and sisters and siblings, and everyone's kind of blessed with a certain sort of talent, whether they realize it or not. I just pretty much got the sports kind of bug, whereas my brother David got the artistic ability. One of my older brothers, Tommy, was just really super good with electronics and computers. He could fix everything and anything. So yeah, pretty much all my brothers were, and to this day are blessed with, some sort of unique talent, for sure. Yeah.
I heard that your dad was like one of the first people to move to Tosa or something like that. Can you
Yeah,
explain that?
yeah, sure. He grew up over here on 83rd Street, and his dad built the house that's still there today. We could walk by it just a couple blocks away. And it was one of the first homes built here in Wauwatosa. And so we have some photographs and a couple of different paintings of his house, his childhood house, 83rd and Clark there. And the rest of this entire area is all grass and fields. Literally no development. Just some different roads coming from North Avenue to 83rd and Clark. So yeah, he was one of the first homes here in Wauwatosa.
That must have been a crazy experience for him. Did he ever like talk to you about any specific experiences he had, maybe being like in this open field in this new place?
Well, and it's interesting. I think I might have told you guys he's also a 1951 grad of Marquette University High School, and so he would go from Wauwatosa each and every day, take the streetcar down to 35th and Wisconsin, and that's how he got to school each morning and each on the way home each afternoon. Taking the streetcar to and from school.
Where
So not the bus, but the streetcar.
Where would he have to walk to that street?
I think he would pick it up on 88th and North. And don't get me wrong, there are some other developments and there are some other homes up here. He wasn't the only house, but in this particular area, in this neighborhood, he was one of the first. His dad built one of the first homes. Yeah.
So I guess to contrast that, how did you get to school as like a middle schooler and a high schooler?
Middle school was super convenient because it was only, a couple of houses away across Burleigh. High school, I attended Brookfield East for 4 years. It was either one of my parents dropping me off in the morning and then I'd kind of get a ride home with somebody in the afternoon, whether that was a buddy that was lucky enough to have a car. I don't think I took the bus a whole lot in high school. I was able to either get a ride by one of my parents or a ride home by, a friend or family friend.
That's nice.
Cool. So, let's move on to high school career now. So, how would you say your high school career differs hugely from ours? Like in what platforms would it be different from? Technology, obviously, but more.
Yeah, technology. Well, first of all, I went to a co-ed high school where you guys are at all boys high school. So that's obviously a big difference.
Public-private, too.
Yeah, in public and private, exactly. I will say, back when I was growing up in the, it would be the 70s and 80s, the public schools, in particular, Elmbrook Public Schools, had just a fabulous reputation. And I think, not to get into any politics or any, oh gosh, it used to be this way and now it's this way, but just the public school system in general was really quite good when I was growing up. And just obviously times have changed and things have changed. And so, you guys are really, really lucky to be going to such a great private Catholic Jesuit high school like Marquette High. So.
Yeah, and you talked about how the good education in the public schools. Do you think that was more specific to the suburbs, and did you think there was a big difference, or did you notice any difference between the suburbs and maybe like an MPS school?
Yeah, back I'm gonna frame it kind of around sports. Back when we were in high school in the '80s, we were in the Braveland Conference, and we participated against a lot of schools out here in the suburbs. But I remember playing non-conference games all the time against Milwaukee North, Milwaukee Juneau, Milwaukee Marshall. There were some really good, obviously I remember some really great games, but it seemed like there was more, from a sporting standpoint, there was more collaboration or more contesting against, schools from the south side, schools from up in Mequon, the north side, schools in the city of Milwaukee. Whereas I don't know if there's, from a sporting perspective, there's that much or as many games for interconference games like that. It seemed like there was just, it was a little bit more back then.
Yeah, that's interesting because now we have about half our games are conference and in-conference, so you have more conference games.
Yeah, and I'm just trying to think that, I still keep track of not only what Marquette High does, but Brookfield East, and it seems like they don't play as many non-conference games against teams from Milwaukee or West Dallas or Oak Creek or, Mequon, Thiensville, etc.
Yeah, they kind of have like their own like league over there. It kind of seems like I've never played a Milwaukee team for baseball.
Okay.
I don't think. Anyhow, so your high school career, do you have any like major memories that you remember, like from like anything really funny or anything that like changed you in a certain way?
Oh gosh, major memories. Something funny?
Well, I don't know, something notable.
Something notable. Gosh, maybe we should take a break right here, and I can think of something before we come back. Before we come back on camera here. Something notable. Gosh, Ian, you're stumping me. I don't know if you posed this question to me in our preparation for this, so you're catching me off guard.
I can ask you a side question.
Sure. I'll think about it.
To kind of connect back to the sports inner city, in a more general sense, would you say, like, especially as a high schooler, you noticed maybe even like a tension between, say, like an inner city school and a suburb like Brookfield, especially maybe sports, or just maybe you avoided going in that area?
Really not at all. I'll tell a quick story. This is actually something that kind of shaped and changed. I know I'm referencing sports a lot, but in the summer, as a basketball player and wanting to get better and play against different kids and different, hopefully kids with better skill sets and stuff like that, we would not only play down here at Hart Park in Wauwatosa, they had a summer league, but we would also go to the Mitchell Park Domes, and it was a basketball league in the summer called Mitchell Park League. And so here we are, a bunch of kids from Brookfield, and we made sure that we were in that Mitchell Park League every summer, and it was fantastic because we were playing against kids from different city schools, which I talked about before, and the competition, the level of competition, and just the talent was, really at a high level. So I think that helped shape me, and it was one of the experiences with doing some different things, in this case, basketball, playing hoops down at Mitchell Park, and it was just a conglomeration of kids from different areas, really all around southeastern Wisconsin, but it was known as the premier kind of place to play basketball in the summer. And I remember
were you getting to know guys and like from different areas and maybe helped you remove bias or anything, or what was that like?
We would get to obviously know kind of by name and face, or you'd recognize that kid and you'd say, I remember playing against him last summer. He was so good. Or, and then you might look in the newspaper. We weren't necessarily looking online or on Google or anything like that back in the day. It was picking up the newspaper and finding out, hey, that kid from, Milwaukee Riverside, or that kid from Marquette High, or whomever that kid or wherever that kid was from. And that's how you kind of kept track with them, through the newspaper, which is a lot different than today, for sure.
Yeah. So right around that time in your life, I would assume you were starting to get your license.
Yep.
License. So did you get that at 16?
I did.
Did you notice like any like big switches like in the places you were going, or like maybe you stopped by Milwaukee more, or like when you could drive by yourself?
Yeah. When I got my license, I have to say, thank goodness my mom and dad were very trusting, and they'd let me we had a station wagon, a Ford station wagon, which wasn't the coolest looking car, but it was transportation. And I remember the first day I got my, I don't know if you guys had the same experience, I got my driver's license during the school day. That was kind of an excused absence. Mm-hmm. So then at 3 o'clock, I had tennis practice at Brookfield East, and my mom let me take the car to tennis practice the first day I had my driver's license. So I thought that was pretty cool. Yeah. But, we'd go all kinds of places. I mean, my friends and I, when we were 16 and first driving and just had our driver's license, we'd go down to the lakefront, or we'd go down to, in the summer, we'd go to Summerfest, or, we'd tool all over. And yeah.
So you mentioned basketball and tennis a couple times now. So I assume you played high school tennis, high school basketball?
Yep.
So what was that like, being a student athlete with two sports? Did you love it? Did you hate it?
Loved it. Really, really enjoyed it. It keeps you out of trouble. I think it helps you learn, how to keep a schedule. You're juggling obviously school and your home life and sports, and I think it really contributes to kind of shaping you as in my case, a young guy, balancing a lot of different things. I'm sure you guys can relate to it with soccer and with baseball.
Yeah.
There's a lot of time that goes into it, but at the same time, obviously, you got to keep doing well in school and keep helping where you need to help around the house and all those kinds of things.
Yeah.
So at Brook East was it hard to make a team? Was the teams really good, or because Marquette's teams are usually pretty good, so sometimes it can be hard to make the volleyball, soccer, baseball team. So how was it at Brook East when you were there?
I think the difference, honestly, Ian, is that at a situation like you guys are at Marquette High, there's guys coming from all different parts of southeastern Wisconsin, and in many cases, you're getting the best students and the best athletes, I think, from a lot of different areas.
Yeah.
In Brookfield, or pretty much anywhere, especially when I was growing up, we had that circle of students, circle of athletes, and they were all from that particular area. So I kind of knew who the best football players were, or the best basketball players or tennis players when we started to have organized sports, and that usually starts in, 5th, 6th grade,
Yeah.
and then you go into junior high, and you pretty much know who the good players are and
Yeah.
who's going to continue to get better and
Yeah.
be part of varsity and things like that.
So there was main feeder schools to Brook East. There was I'm sure a few different schools.
Yeah, there were a few different junior high schools, and then a handful of grade schools that would all end up feeding.
Yeah.
And there was Brookfield Central and Brookfield East. Those were the two big high schools when I was growing up.
And then, as compared to middle school and elementary school, did you keep that same friend group? And were they more athletes and more athletic on your teams, or did it change at all?
Yeah, I've definitely kept, to this day, being 57 years old now, I still have a ton of friends that were junior high school buddies, some college friends as well. But yeah, the circle of friends, a friend of mine that I've known since first grade lives up in Oshkosh. He just texted me last weekend. He's like, hey, I'm in town. Do you want to get a beer? Do you want to have lunch? So yeah, I'm still real close with that core group of friends.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
It's nice.
Yep.
So were you do you ever go to the Brewer games while they were at County Stadium?
Yep.
And how
Yep.
would you compare Miller Park to County Stadium?
AmFam Field.
I don't go by that.
It's the experience of just going to a ball game at AmFam or Miller Park. There's so many other things going on, and I think that it's kind of like an entertainment destination. You have all kinds of things happening out in the concourses, all kinds of things happening while the game's going on. It seems like there's constantly music playing.
Yeah, there's constantly
during
little
baseball
trivia
games. Yeah, trivia games on the scoreboard. My recollection and my memory is when we would go to a ball game at County Stadium, it was baseball.
Yeah.
And you could, not that you could hear what was going on in the field, but I remember hearing the pitch hit the catcher's mitt.
Mm-hmm.
There were more sounds of baseball as opposed to, like I said, all kinds of other things going on when you're at the ballpark these days.
Yeah.
And then also, of course, the Packers were playing some of their games in Milwaukee at that point. Did you ever make a stop down there at County Stadium?
Yeah, I think I've only been to one Green Bay Packer game at County Stadium.
Okay.
I think it was when I was in the 5th or 6th grade. It was a hard ticket to get, and not everybody was, similar to Lambeau now. Tickets at County Stadium for Packers game, they were hard to come by.
Yeah, I bet.
Yeah.
What
So.
about the Bucks? Do you ever go to their games?
Growing up, I didn't go to a lot of. They played at the Milwaukee Arena. I didn't go to a lot of Bucks games. Like I mentioned, my mom and dad are graduates of Marquette University College, and we had season tickets to the Milwaukee Arena down there. So I was there for more of those games than anything.
How were the sports teams here when you were in the 70s? I forget.
Well,
I don't think the Bucks were very good.
Well, the Bucks won their championship in '77, so I was, I was 12. But my memory of the Milwaukee Bucks, Ian, is they weren't a lot of great teams.
Yeah.
Marquette was really good. Excuse me, the Bucks won in '72. Marquette won the national championship in '77.
Okay.
Yeah, the Bucks won it in '72 here in town.
Kareem couldn't have left much after '72. I don't know.
Yeah, I think he was maybe here a couple more seasons or a season more.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And then it's kind of there's a question I missed when we were talking about you playing high school sports. You mentioned your high school basketball team went in the playoffs, and I think you said they lost off of maybe a buzzer beater.
Yeah.
Is that right?
Yeah.
How was that experience?
A last-second shot, or a field goal by. We were playing Milwaukee North. We were in the sectional finals, and at that point, it was 8 teams would go to state, and so if we actually missed a basket at the buzzer, and if we would have made that basket, we would have gone up to the state tournament in Madison, which even to this day is a big deal for, any sport going to state.
Yeah. Awesome.
But yeah, it was at the West Allis Central Fieldhouse against Milwaukee North. I remember it vividly.
I bet.
Yeah.
And then one more thing from your high school days. You also mentioned Gillies. That
Yes.
was a big part of your high school life. What was that like?
Yeah, it was a meeting place. I know we talked about it last week or a couple of weeks ago when we were prepping for today. It was a gathering area for a lot of kids from all different parts of the city. Probably because they had great shakes, great malts. It was kind of just a cool place to hang out. And so when we talked about moving around in our parents' car and taking the car and picking up a couple buddies, 9 times out of 10 we'd end up at Gillies, at 9, 10 o'clock before we were supposed to be home. But yeah, and I think to this day it's still obviously kind of a really great place to stop, and I think it's a favorite for a lot of people around southeastern Wisconsin.
Yeah.
But yeah, it was a big hangout for us.
Yeah, that's awesome.
So
Yeah.
Gillies was a big one, and then, but was there any other spot in the Tosa area where you would hang out? Because nowadays, other high schools know it as kind of like a middle spot.
Yeah, this sounds kind of corny. We used to hang out at McDonald's on Capitol Drive in Brookfield. It was where we went after basketball games. I remember going there after school to get a burger. Trying to think of some other hangouts. Gillies, McDonald's. It's like everything revolved around food. I guess we were young, hungry guys back then.
Definitely. And then before we go into your college days, is there any last things you'd like to maybe talk about from high school that maybe we're missing?
No, I don't think so. I'm still trying to think of an event or something that kind of shaped my or changed me.
I've got a question. So right now we were just thinking about our senior pranks and what we were gonna do.
Oh.
So what did your class do anything for it?
I don't remember what we did as a class, but I remember what we did that morning. Are you guys familiar with Worth Park out in Brookfield?
Yeah.
Yeah.
They have a bunch of baseball diamonds out there, tennis courts. I think they have Fourth of July fireworks at Worth Park. It's kind of a Brookfield Parks and Recreation area. And to this day, they still have a sledding hill. And I remember my buddy had a Plymouth Horizon, which is a little crappy little 4-door Plymouth Chrysler. And for some reason, we found ourselves, 4 of us in his car, going up the sledding hill and down the sledding hill. And this was before we even went to school in the morning. And that was kind of like our senior. It wasn't a prank necessarily. It was just really a stupid thing to do. Thank goodness the Brookfield police didn't catch on and didn't see us go up the sledding hill and down the sledding hill.
That's hilarious. Hey, that's a good one for senior prank, kind of.
Yeah, kind of.
Okay, so then I guess we're moving into college. So you obviously attended Madison, correct?
Yep, University of Wisconsin-Madison.
Okay,
Yep.
you still a big Badger fan today?
Totally. Yep.
Okay.
Yep.
And then what were you majoring in, and why did you choose that major?
I ended up getting my degree. It was a Bachelor of Arts degree in The study was called mass communications. I think I always had an interest in the media and television, film, radio, and I think I was drawn to that particular, kinds of studies. I think to this day, a lot of kids go to school, go to college, and they're not sure their freshman, sophomore year. And as they're at school and they experience some different classes and things like that, they kind of gravitate towards something. I mean, some kids know in high school or in junior high what they're going to be. I want to be an engineer. I want to be a scientist or a writer or whatever the case is. When I went up there, I kind of had an open mind and I kind of gravitated towards that. And I think it set me up and prepared me pretty well because I've spent the bulk of my professional career in media here in Milwaukee. So, yeah.
Did one of your older brothers go to Madison?
No, I had a brother my oldest brother, Tim, went to UW-La Crosse. My brother, Tom, he went to school for electronics, Madison School of Electronics. So he was in Madison for a period of time. My other brother, David, went to UWM. And my youngest brother, he had an art degree at UWM. And my youngest brother, Matt, he went to, he got a 2-year degree in the recording industry at a school in Chillicothe, Ohio for audio visual. It's like an audio visual recording school.
Oh, that's cool.
And he's still in that profession to this day.
So what turned you on to Madison if you didn't have any major connection to it?
Well, I think growing up, when I was young, I was a Badger fan. I think I always really liked the Badger football team. Mm-hmm. I thought it was a Big Ten school. I knew it was a beautiful area on Lake Mendota, between Lake Mendota, Lake Minota. I wanted to get away for college, get away from home, but at the same time, I didn't want to go too far. So Madison was kind of just far enough. Scenario.
Middleman,
yeah, I used to take the Badger bus. I think you guys might have seen or are familiar with the Badger bus. Yeah. I used to take it up and back all the time.
That's awesome.
Right from 84th and the freeway. 84th and Blue Mountain, they had a Badger bus stop, and parents would drive me over there, jump on, and you go back up to your dorm or go back up to your apartment.
Nice.
So, yeah.
And then, so you obviously were away from Milwaukee during this period. But you're here now. Do you think that your time at Madison made you realize maybe you want to stay here in Milwaukee the rest of your life? Or how did that kind of go down?
I think it contributed, for sure. I've always been really comfortable here in Milwaukee. I think I mentioned it's a great place by a great lake. But I just think with the lakefront and everything that Milwaukee has to offer with the different festivals, the various festivals throughout the year, State Fair Park. There's just a lot of different things throughout the year, especially during the summertime, that Milwaukee has to offer. And, living here in Wauwatosa or growing up in Brookfield, you're close enough that you can, like you said, Ian, you can shoot down to Bradford Beach or shoot down to Summerfest in 15, 20 minutes.
Yeah.
So it's really... And, the surrounding suburbs, I think it just makes for a really great place to raise your family and stay put.
Yeah.
So nowadays, it's pretty common for upperclassmen to have cars while they're on campus. Was it not very common back then?
No, just really a select few guys had cars when they were growing up. And it's funny because the select few that I can remember, a couple friends of mine, Tom Herzog, Jim Ledoux, they both had jobs in high school too. And I think that was a big thing where their parents told them that, hey, if we're going to figure out a way for you to have a car, transportation, you better be earning some money as well. So that adds to something we talked about before. So you got school, if you're playing some sports, and then you have a part-time job as well. It's a ton of things to juggle while you're in high school.
Oh, we missed that too. Did you have any jobs throughout high school?
In high school, I really didn't. I didn't really have any jobs during the summer. In college, I did a bunch of. I had my own little lawn cutting business. I worked at Century Foods for 3 years. In the summer during college, I worked as a roofer. for a summer. It was the hottest, toughest summer ever, being on commercial roofs for the better part of 3 months.
Sure.
That was not good. Quite a learning experience. But yeah, I didn't have a job. I don't remember having a job in high school during the summer, during the school year. No, I was lucky.
Well, it's hard with sports too.
It is.
Yeah. And so, kind of maybe a specific memory question for you.
Sure.
A lot of people remember meeting their first like group of friends in college, maybe new group of friends. Did you keep kind of the same high school group, or do you have like a specific time where you met all these new guys?
The college experience for me pretty much happened in the dorms. So when I went to Madison, I roomed my first 2 years with my high school tennis partner, my doubles partner, and a really good friend of mine from high school. His name's Kenny Stewart. So we lived in the dorms for 2 years in Madison, Lakeshore dorms. But the cool part about living in the dorms in college is you are immediately, on the same floor and in the same dorm as, hundreds of other kids.
Yeah.
So you meet everybody obviously on your wing or on your floor, and you get to know those guys really well too. Kind of interesting up in Madison, they would have, if it was a 4-story or 4-floor dormitory, guys would be on like the first and third floor, and girls would be on the second and fourth floor. That's how they set it up back in, this was obviously in the 1980s in Madison. I don't know if it's that way today or if they're all on the same floor or how they do things,
I
but
think it depends. I think sometimes they'll have a full building, like a certain gender, and then sometimes they'll mix them. I don't know.
yeah.
But other than those 2 roommates, did you have any other like people you knew going to Madison?
Yeah, there was a good contingent of guys and girls from Brookfield East that went to Madison.
Oh, nice.
I'd say, I think my graduating class from high school was 252, and I'd say there's probably a good 20 or 30 kids that went to UW-Madison.
Nice.
Yeah.
And then, correct me if I'm wrong, but did you say you met your wife at Madison?
I did.
Okay,
Yeah.
so she was a student there as well?
She was a student. She was a year ahead of me. She grew up in Shorewood, down on the east side. She went to Shorewood High School. But I met her at her 20th birthday party in the dorms, in her roommate threw her birthday party, and some way, somehow, I ended up there. And that's how I met her. Yeah, she lived in a separate dorm from us. She lived in Bradley, and I lived in Cole. So,
Nice.
yeah,
That's fun.
yeah.
Go with another one.
So you guys have that to look forward to, meeting your future wife
Yeah, 20th
when you
birthday
go to college. Yeah, exactly.
So that would have been your, junior year then?
Actually, it was my freshman year. So I think I was 19 at the time, and she was a year ahead of me,
Gotcha.
and it was her sophomore year.
Okay.
Yeah.
So then you guys were in a relationship throughout most of your college
Yeah,
life?
we ended up hanging out for the most part in and being pretty close in college. We didn't get married till I was 26, so we were several years out of college. We were both several years out of college, but yeah.
Nice.
Yeah.
Did you ever were you ever really homesick when you went off to college, or were you ready?
I was ready.
Yeah.
It's kind of and you guys will experience it. It's pretty neat when, let me think. Oh, and you're going to Massachusetts for school.
Yes.
You're going to Wisconsin. You're going to Ohio, right? So when you go, and whether your parents take you or whomever takes you, and then they drop you off and they leave, it's a pretty cool feeling because you're on your own. Everything is completely new, and if you're living in a dorm situation, you probably have some fun guys that you're going to end up being lifelong friends with and hang out with, and you're on your own. And everything that your mom and dad taught you and all the things you learned, all of a sudden you got to put them into practice. Because the same things are priority. Your studies, you got to make sure you eat well and not have too much fun when you're in college. But yeah, it's a pretty cool, to your point, Ian, it's a pretty cool feeling when they drop you off and you watch them drive away.
Yeah.
You're like, this is really happening.
Yeah.
So it's pretty cool. Yeah.
Okay, that's fun. So you said you had a bunch of part-time jobs throughout your college life.
Mm-hmm.
Is this where you started to realize your passion and, like, your first job out of college, what you precisely wanted to do?
Yeah, I mean, I knew graduating with a communications degree, I knew I either wanted to get into the media or I wanted to get into some sort of situation where maybe I was representing a company in a public relations role or a communications role or something like that. But really, my first true career job out of school was selling radio, being a radio sales guy for a couple of radio stations right here in Milwaukee. So.
Okay, so then you obviously came right back to Milwaukee then. Was
Yep.
there ever a doubt and you wanted to maybe like leave the state, or did you always knew you were coming back?
Yeah, I don't know. I'm sure my wife or my girlfriend Meg at the time, I'm sure she had something to do with it too, that I wanted to stay around here. And she got a job here as well, working for a newspaper, a small newspaper. So, yeah, I guess I wasn't that adventuresome or didn't want to run off to the East Coast or West Coast or go down south or something. It just really wasn't part of the plan.
Turned out great though.
Yeah.
Were you when you were in college? Were you in a frat at all?
I was not.
No.
No.
How was the party life in Madison?
Went to a lot of frat parties though. Had a lot of friends that pledged a number of different fraternities. My wife now, Meg, she was a Gamma Phi Beta, so she was in a sorority. She really enjoyed that. The frats up in Madison, they're pretty rowdy. It gets pretty crazy on Langdon Street up there. But yeah, I never pledged or never went down that path.
Yeah, it's fair.
Yeah.
You guys want to take a break before we get into the after college?
Sure.
For a break?
Sure.
All right, those headphones.
All right, so we left off talking about your college experience, and then so now we're gonna go to your first job out of college. So what was that like, getting out into the real world?
Well, I have to preface this by telling you guys my first job as a college graduate, I had two of them. It was working at the YMCA in the health center and selling slacks in the men's department at Boston Store. Because, everybody's dream coming out of college is have that career path and have that job all lined up and ready to go. Well, in some cases, it's not necessarily it doesn't go according to plan. Mm-hmm. So I remember I moved back home with my parents and got two jobs because A, I needed to earn some money, and B, I wanted to keep busy. And then about 6 or 9 months into that, I landed my first kind of real job. And that was with, it was a broadcasting company called Sundance Broadcasting, and they owned a couple of radio stations. The country radio station, which is still here in Milwaukee today, FM 106, and then WOKY, which was an AM news talk station. And I was selling advertising. I was working with companies and helping them put their message on the radio.
Okay. Is that similar to something you do today, or was it
Yeah,
kind of
very much so.
A lot of connections there?
Yep, a lot of connections. Fast forward 30 some years later, I'm still in the media industry. I work for iHeart Media, which is the largest media company in the United States. We have 6 radio stations in our cluster here and another 7 up in Madison. And I'm not selling per se right now. I'm more in a managerial role. So I work with all the salespeople here in Milwaukee and all the salespeople up in Madison. So yeah.
Where did when you got your first real job? When did you move out of your house quick?
Not right away. I think when we were prepping for this, I talked about how I lived with a couple of my brothers. I lived down on the east side of Milwaukee for a period of time on Downer Avenue. My brother David, the artist, he was early. He's 3 years older than me, so he was early on in his career too, having graduated from UWM, and he got this great apartment on the 4th floor on Downer Avenue, kind of overlooking the east side of Milwaukee. And I remember I lived with him for a period of time, and my job was out in Greenfield, in the Berlin area, and so I'd drive from downtown out to Greenfield for work every day. But cool experience living for a short period of time kind of down in the happening east side of Milwaukee on Downer Avenue. It was fun.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
So would you say that part of your life was maybe where you felt the most immersed in the city of Milwaukee?
Yeah, particularly that period of time where I remember David and I hanging out on the weekends down on the east side. It was cool living with your brother, and it was neat being kind of in a real kind of eclectic, cool neighborhood down on the east side. And then I think I mentioned too, for a period of time, I lived with my oldest brother Tim right over here on 75th off of Center Street, and I lived with him for about a year. And this was all when I was out of school and just trying to get my feet on the ground, and I wasn't living at home anymore. I had moved out,
Yeah.
but I did the next best thing. I moved in with one of my brothers. So it was a lot of fun. I have a lot of good memories of that too.
How was the area that David's apartment was in?
So he was on Downer, and it was pretty much about, if you guys know where, I know you're a golfer, Ian, Lake Park Golf Course.
Yeah.
It's a little par 3 course.
Yesterday.
Really?
Yeah.
He was just a couple blocks west of that. But yeah, super cool. I mean, I think to this day, a lot of young people down there, even a lot of young families. It's a neat part, the east side is, along Prospect and along Farwell and Downer. Really cool part of the city.
Yeah.
Very vibrant.
Yeah. So this is probably the first time you have all this freedom and you're actually kind of taking care of bills probably.
Yep.
What was that like? Was that a huge shift for you?
Yeah, the first car I had, my dad helped me pick it out. It was a Chevy Malibu. I paid $1,750 for it. And it was a 2-door. And the worst, this sounds like an old guy talking about his first car, but the worst part about it is it was a nice looking car, Chevy Malibu, 2-door. But the air conditioning went out in it.
Oh.
So here I am, being a sales guy, driving out to the radio stations, going to see customers and stuff, and I didn't have any air conditioning. It was a super pain in the butt, but I made it through, and so that's kind of my first, talking about paying bills, and I eased into all those, responsibilities because my brothers and I, we were paying the rent together, and I had a very inexpensive car, and the dang air conditioning didn't work, and but yeah, that's how it goes when you're young and you're just getting started.
Yeah.
Freedom, lots of freedom though.
Yeah. Exactly.
Yeah.
Where was Mrs. Lenz during this time? How was your relationship with her at this time?
She was living at home in Shorewood with her mom and dad on Woodburn Street in Shorewood.
You were seeing her a lot.
Yeah, I was seeing her a lot, and it was cool. I had a full-time job, I had a car, had a girlfriend.
Yeah.
The world was great. Life was great.
Yeah. And then to tie this back to Milwaukee again.
Sure.
You're in the city. What are you doing on the weekend? Are you constantly downtown, going out to eat? Is it crazy? Like, what's it like?
Yeah, I mean, I remember some restaurants that we used to go to. There's a place on, I think it's on Farwell. It's called the Pasta Tree. It was a famous. It's not ringing a bell with you guys.
No.
I remember eating at Zafiro's Pizza,
Yeah.
which is still pretty popular to this day. Yeah, I mean, we would go downtown. I'll tell you guys a quick story about. I think nowadays there really aren't nightclubs anymore.
Yeah.
Back in the day, back in the 80s, 90s, nightclubs were a big deal. Where I remember, this goes back to high school. We used to go down to a place. It was on the corner of Water Street and Kilbourne, and it was called Park Avenue. Maybe some people that are going to watch this video that are on my age, they'll remember Park Avenue. And it was this 2 or 3 story nightclub, and they played loud music, music that was popular then. They had all kinds of, crazy lighting, and it was a place that you would go and dance and hang out. And
Really cool.
yeah, it's called Park Avenue.
So you'd go there with all your friends?
Go there, and
Saturday
even
night?
during high school, yeah.
Oh, that's
Yeah.
awesome.
Was the rave going? Was the rave having concerts at that
Yeah,
time?
the rave was there. I've only been to a couple of shows at the rave, but yeah, they were still bringing artists in, and the rave's got some really great history behind it too. Did you know there's a swimming pool in the basement of the rave?
Yeah, we learned all about that.
You guys heard about
Yeah,
that?
it's
Haunted,
Eagles Club.
apparently.
Yeah, to this day, when they have, actually, I'll tell a quick story. I think I told you guys, you asked me when we were prepping for this, some famous people you've met. I got a chance to meet a big country artist. His name is John Partey. And he came and played the BMO Harris, or maybe it was the amphitheater last year.
Okay.
And he tours all around the country. But I met him when I was out on a trip for business in California. And we were talking and we were having a beer. And he's like, where are you guys from? And we said, we're from Milwaukee. And he goes, oh, I love the rave. This is John Partey, one of the biggest country music stars. And he equates the rave with Milwaukee.
Wow.
He's like, yeah, they got that swimming pool and it's haunted. What a great place. What a great venue. And then I corrected him and I said, you know, John, you're not playing the rave when you come to Milwaukee. You're playing the Marcus, or actually the AmFam Theater on the Summerfest grounds that seats like 25,000 people. I think the rave, maybe they get a couple thousand and it's like standing room only, isn't it?
Oh, definitely.
Yeah.
It's so hot in there always.
So yeah, you met John Partey. That's really cool. Maybe describe, first of all, how you're getting to this point to meet somebody like that, and also what was that experience like?
Yeah, it was kind of you guys will probably start talking about, oh, I want a bucket list. You know, there's people talk about places or things they want to do, and it's their bucket list. One of the things I always wanted to do was go out to California, play golf at Pebble Beach. So I had the opportunity through work, through iHeart, we did a client trip, and I was able to take one of our best customers out to California, play golf at Pebble Beach and Spyglass. And iHeart has the ability to grab an artist and have that artist come out and join all the iHeart folks and all our clients. And that artist happened to be John Partey. So he was out there and he did a little mini concert for us, and that's how we got to talk to him. And it was pretty cool. I got to check off a lot of things that day.
Oh, yeah.
Meeting a country music star, playing Pebble Beach.
How was Pebble Beach?
Pebble Beach is really, really neat.
It's
Yeah.
caddy only, obviously, right?
Caddy only. Yep. Actually, I take that back, Ian. We were able to drive. We had one cart between the four golfers and then two caddies.
Oh, okay.
And everybody kind of just shares, your clubs are on the cart. Everybody kind of just shares. If it's a long walk, you can jump in the cart. But for the most part, it's walking only. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
So to bring it back to, you're living on, what was the street again, Downer?
Yeah, I was down on Downer. Yep.
Okay, so
Down
how
on
does-
Downer.
Yeah, down on Downer. So how does this transition start from you're super young, just getting into the workforce, to
Yep.
eventually transitioning to maybe getting married, starting a family?
Yeah.
What was that like? When did that start to happen?
Yeah, I'm trying to remember the timeline, but I think a couple years into the work world, I was able to get my first apartment, and that was over here in Tosa on 68th and Clark, so just about 13 blocks down from where we're sitting right now. And it was an upper duplex. It was a corner duplex, and the guy that owned the duplex lived downstairs, and I was able to rent the apartment upstairs. It was small. It was a living room, 1 bedroom, 1 bath, kitchen. But that was my first apartment.
And is that when you moved in with Mrs. Lenz?
Yeah, and then once we were married, that was our first home together, 68th and Clark here in Wauwatosa.
Cool.
Yeah, yeah.
And then where did you go off to after that? How long were you living there?
I think we lived there a short time, maybe just a year and a half.
Okay.
And then we were able to buy our first house right here on 85th Street, 2400 block of 85th Street. And we lived there until we had our second child, and then we outgrew that house, and then we moved right next door here, and we've been next door here for 25 years.
Cool.
Yeah.
And is it around the time of that apartment when you got your job at iHeart, or were there a couple jobs in between?
There are a couple jobs in between. I worked in the radio business. I stayed in the media business, and then I went to work for a different radio company, and I continued to sell advertising. It was WKLH radio, and I ended up working there for 12 years. That was kind of my a good part of my radio career, working at WKLH radio. Now it's WKLH, The Hog. If you guys ever listen to the radio, Bob and Brian are on in the morning, if you know who those guys are. The Hog is a hard rock station.
Yeah.
KLH is a classic hit station. So yeah, I was there for a long period of time, 12 years. And then I also worked down at the Journal Broadcast Group down on Capitol Drive.
Mm.
They call it Radio City.
Okay.
To this day, they still call it Radio City. And I worked for WTMJ and WKTI down on Capitol Drive as well.
That's cool. So
Yeah.
when you start having, when was the first time like after marriage that you really like started talking about having Danny?
Having Danny.
Everything.
Um,
That's his kid, by the way.
yeah, that's my oldest of three. Let's see. I'm trying to think how long we were married, Ian, before we had our first child. I think we were married about 5 years, because I think I was 31 when Danny was born, and we got married when I was 25.
Oh.
So we were married close to 5 years before we had our first child. And there's different ways to go about that. I mean, some people get married and they have a kid right away.
Yeah.
Some people, unfortunately, have difficulty having kids and it takes longer and these kinds of things. But for us, it worked out really nicely because we were married. We were both working. We had 5 years to save some money, get established, get our feet on the ground, got our first house.
Yeah.
So it worked out really nicely.
And how was having another body in the house? Is that a hard switch for you?
Well, I talked about when your parents drop you off at college and they drive away. There's that
Mhm.
freedom.
Mm-hmm.
When you bring your first child home from the hospital and there aren't any doctors or nurses around, it's a little bit scary.
Yeah. Okay.
You're like, we're responsible for this,
Yeah.
but it's super cool, and you learn the ropes quickly, and you learn. I hope you're not hearing my stomach growling on camera here. It's like I said, it's kind of scary, but at the same time, it's obviously super exciting
Yeah.
having somebody else in the house.
Yeah.
For sure.
Yeah.
And then, so, at the point where you're kind of outside of the city in that apartment, and
Yep.
you're still here, you're still commuting into the city for work, correct? Is that?
Well, I was kind of, because I was in a radio sales role where I was calling on different businesses in and around Milwaukee. So yeah, I might be downtown, on a Tuesday, or I might be up in West Bend on a Wednesday, and it was pretty much you went where your customers were or your potential clients were. But yeah, having an office when I first started out in New Berlin, Greenfield, I'd get around to all different parts of the city
Okay.
for business.
That's cool.
Yeah.
So, would you say there's a big difference between, kind of, because you know this now, since you were a kid coming into the city versus as an adult working coming into the city? What's like a big change maybe you've noticed between either the suburbs and the city or just within the city?
That's a good question. I think just the level of comfort that I have with going downtown. I think when I was younger, and not only Milwaukee, but you think of like bigger cities, like going to Chicago. I don't know if you guys have gone to Chicago on your own or hung out down there at all. But sometimes it can be intimidating, and traffic flow and big buildings and, just the unfamiliarity. But now I've been going downtown for so many years and for so long, maybe because I'm old. But there's a comfort level because I know where I'm going. I know where to park.
Yeah.
We know the good restaurants. It's just nice to have that kind of comfort level. So to answer your question, it used to be uncomfortable, and I would sometimes be nervous and just kind of on edge going downtown because it's the city.
Yeah.
And now I'm just, 100% comfortable, and I can find my way anywhere I need to go down there,
Cool. Yeah.
even without Google Maps or,
I need Google Maps,
talking
so-
to Siri.
Definitely.
Yeah.
Would you looking back on it, would you have wanted to raise your kids like anywhere else other than here, or you thought this was a good spot?
Yeah, I'm to this day, I think it's been a great place and continues to be a great place to raise a family, raise your kids.
Yeah.
Like we said before, there's so much happening throughout the year. I mean, one of the things my daughter and I, my middle child is a girl, Grace, and one of the things we love to do is go down to Red Arrow Park in the winter and ice skate right downtown across from the Marcus Center for the Performing Arts. They got a Starbucks there, and they got the coolest ice rink. Things like that. It's really fun. It's a cool part of downtown for sure.
Yeah. And then, so before this interview, you said one of the most important things you want to talk about was raising your kids.
Mm-hmm.
So I guess how has that been changing for you, and like one of the most significant things in your life?
Yeah, there's a lot I could unpack with that, Owen.
We have
You know,
time.
yeah, I'm blessed with three kids. Danny's my oldest, Grace is our middle child, and my youngest, Luke, is particularly special because he was born with Down syndrome. So he's kind of he's our pride and joy. Ian knows him quite well. You guys got to meet him when you're here. So it's been really, really great having a really tight, close-knit family, particularly with a son with special needs, and all that goes into raising him and helping him have a really great life as well. And then kind of to play off of that, one of the things that's really, makes me super happy and I have a lot of pride in is that my oldest two, Danny and Grace, are both going into professions that have a lot to do with Luke and everything that happened as he grew up. And what I mean by that is Danny's going to be a physical therapist. He's going to school at UWM for that. And Grace just graduated from Concordia, and she's a speech pathologist, which are two great professions and super, super important for Luke and his development throughout his life. And so it's pretty neat. I did what I did for a professional career, but the great part about my oldest two kids and what they're going to do is they're going to be helping, kids like Luke and people in different therapies, which is, when I talk about my family, that's one of the great things that gives me a lot of pride and a lot of comfort is how they've grown up. And Luke, for that matter, too. I mean, he's one of the happiest 20-year-old kids you ever want to meet. So he's really special, too.
So is that one of the things you're probably most proud of, both of Danny and Grace for helping Luke throughout his whole life, and also you and your wife, of course, for making a great life for Luke?
Yeah. We had a little party last week. Your brother was over, by the way, Ian, at the party for my daughter's graduation from grad school for her speech therapy degree. And I gave a little toast. And one of the things I said was how happy and how thankful I was for Grace and everything that she's helped with Luke and our family throughout the last, she's 24, so the last 24 years.
Yeah, that's awesome.
Yeah, pretty cool stuff.
Yeah. So was schooling ever a tough topic even with Danny and Grace, did you know that they were going to private school like Christ King, or was that harder?
I have to give all the credit to my wife because my wife Meg grew up in. She went to private schools or Catholic schools all the way up until high school. She went to Shorewood High School in Shorewood, but she was brought up in Catholic schools, and so I remember when we were first married and we were talking about having kids and how are we going to raise them and what are we going to do, and she's like, we're going to send them to Catholic schools. We're going to send them to. We had been living in Wauwatosa. We're going to send them to Christ King. So it was pretty neat. Danny and Grace were able to go through Christ King through 8th grade, and Danny, of course, went to Marquette High, and Grace was able to go to Divine Savior Holy Angels. But to kind of balance that, the pretty cool thing is I also am able to see the value and everything that public schools and the public education and all the resources they have been able to do for my son Luke over the years too. He went to Roosevelt Grade School over here in Wauwatosa, and he went to Longfellow for middle school, and he went to Wauwatosa East for high school. So he's had a lot of help, and the public school system here in Wauwatosa and in our area have been really great and very beneficial and helpful for somebody like Luke with special needs.
Yeah, I saw him getting he was always involved with the sports teams. The sports teams always loved him. I'm sure that brought a lot of joy to his life.
Yep, totally.
And yours, to show that he was integrated into the schooling and everything.
Yep,
right?
yep, very much so. And just to cover that topic a little bit, the difficult thing with a lot of the private schools, private high schools, private grade schools and things like that is they just don't have the personnel, they don't have the aides, they don't have the therapists, they don't have a lot of the people that are integral parts of, helping people, kids like Luke, get through school and get through their childhood years and things like that.
Yeah. So have you and all of your kids, do you like make a cognizant effort to spend a lot of time with them? And if so, what would you say maybe your favorite activities incorporating like Milwaukee or Tosa? Where do you guys go? What do you guys do?
We've spent over the years a lot of time at Hart Park. Danny played a lot of soccer at Hart Park. My son Luke is in Special Olympics track, which is at Hart Park in springtime. So we've spent a lot of time over there. I do a lot of biking particularly with my daughter Grace, and we bike all over different parts of Wauwatosa. We bike down the Hank Aaron Trail all the way downtown and back. So yeah, I guess to answer your question, Owen, some of the things that we do, in and around this area, I have a lot of fond memories and a lot of good memories about different family-oriented things that we've done. We used to go down to, we still do, go down to the 3rd of July fireworks on the lakefront every year. That's a big deal for us.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
So have you guys been going up north lately? Like, we used to go with you to the Merck's cabin, I believe.
Yeah. It's been getting harder and harder because everybody's schedules have gotten so busy over the summer.
Yeah.
Whether they're in school or they're working. So we haven't been up north as much. But when I was growing up, when I was young, we spent a lot of time in northern Wisconsin, in the Boulder Junction area, fishing for muskies.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah. The elusive muskellunge.
The fish of 1,000 casts.
Yeah, totally.
You've always been a big fisher. Is that true?
Yep.
True about you?
Yep.
What do you enjoy about it?
Having 4 brothers and my dad being a big fisherman his whole life, he obviously taught us all how to fish, and spending time in the boat on the lake, with a couple of my other brothers and my dad. You can't beat that.
Okay.
A good day on the water.
Yeah.
Whether you catch any fish or not, it's still fun.
Yeah.
Exactly.
Yeah,
And then
for sure.
just maybe a couple questions to tie it back to Milwaukee.
Sure.
You've given us a great summary of your life so far.
Sure.
That was pretty quick. So first of all, how would you say that Milwaukee, the city itself, kind of as a whole, how has it significantly changed in your eyes from when you were a kid to maybe like now?
I think some of the things that have changed are related to different things and different events and different places downtown have changed. And I can give you an example, like the Grand Avenue used to be a really popular mall downtown on Wisconsin Avenue. And it was a conglomeration it was a huge mall with 2 levels. And I remember back when I was young, I'd meet friends down there during the work hours, during lunch, and we'd go to the Grand Avenue and meet at the food court. I remember doing that with one of my college friends, Dave Seiler, who worked downtown. I'd say, yeah, I'm going to be downtown. I'll meet you at the Grand Avenue. So there's different things that have changed over the years that I think have also changed downtown and the setting down there. And then again, some things haven't changed. I mean, I think people still go downtown for sporting events. They still go down to nice restaurants. The Grand Avenue is something that kind of sticks out in my head.
Yeah.
And I think the other thing that has changed over maybe the last 10, 15, 20 years is there's been a lot of development along the river with all these condominiums and all these apartments, down off of Water Street. And as you go north, there was a big sporting goods store that used to be downtown called Lackey and Joy's. And it was a place where you'd go if you wanted to buy skis or outdoor hiking equipment or all kinds of different products down there. And I just remember going down to Lackey and Joy's, and now you go down there and it's all apartments and it's all condominiums along the river downtown. So I think downtown has changed in a couple of respects where, things that used to be there aren't there anymore. And then, as I mentioned, the apartments and the condos, I think there's a lot of young people living downtown.
Yeah, a lot of taller buildings for sure.
Yeah, yeah.
Newer.
I don't know if that answers your
No,
question.
it definitely does.
Yeah,
It's huge.
yeah.
All right. Well, do we have much more?
We got it all.
I think. Do you have anything? I mean, it's hard to summarize your whole life into an hour.
No,
Anything important you think we might have missed?
no, I enjoyed it, and I think it'll probably make you guys stop and think. Maybe 4 years from now, do I want to move back home? Do I want to move back to the Milwaukee area? And I'm hoping that you have as good of memories from your childhood years and from your high school years of what Milwaukee is and what it has to offer. It's a pretty cool place.
Yeah.
And you can live in the suburbs around Milwaukee, whether it's Elm Grove or Brookfield or Mequon or Thiensville or the South Side, Oak Creek, and you're still so close to everything that's happening downtown. I think that's the best way to describe Milwaukee and the attraction of living here.
Definitely, I agree.
Yeah.
All right. Well, thank you for coming in.
All right.
Thank you
You're
so much.
welcome. That's a wrap.